Shri Sathya Sai Kalpadruma, Day 1. Om Shri Sathya Sai Babaya Namaha. My humble salutations to Shri Sathya Sai Baba. The word Sai Baba literally means Sa plus Ai, mother, and Baba, father. So Swami is our mother and father. Sa means divine, so Sai Baba is our divine mother and father. When a child is young, the foremost duty of the parents is to nurture him, protect him, and imbibe values in the child. Today, millions of devotees from all over the world adore Swami as their divine parent, and Swami takes care of them in like manner. An incident that took place on 4th July 1996 speaks for itself. On this day, while giving a talk on Swami, one student addressed him as my Sai Mata. He further said, "I do not have a mother, but I am blessed with the love of 1,000 mothers." In the divine discourse that followed, Swami explained this statement. He said, "Do you all know why this student referred to me as Sai Mata? 10 years ago, when this boy and his brother were young children, their mother was brought to Vrindavan on a stretcher. They had arrived from Himachal Pradesh. The mother was seriously ill. I drew the children close to me and promised her, 'From now on these children are mine. Don't worry.' The mother was relieved. Later she passed away. Their father rarely comes here. The children have been left under Swami's care. The children started attending school here. The boy was 5 years old and was studying in the first standard. One day the lady warden brought him to me, saying, 'This child is missing his mother terribly. He does not even eat his food, and keeps crying all the time.' I took him to the interview room and materialized a ring for him. I pacified him in many ways. From that moment he was able to overcome his sorrow. He was joyous. This represents just one example. There are millions of people round the world who, as his children, are being constantly looked after by Swami. Swami's love is that of 1,000 mothers, but we are unable to comprehend this. So many of us keep feeling, 'Swami did not look at us, he did not talk to us.' 2 years ago, a middle-aged gentleman came for Swami's darshan after his father's demise. He was sitting in the first row. As Swami came along, this person was overwhelmed with his father's memories, and was unable to control his tears. Swami walked up to him and told him lovingly, 'Don't cry, serve your mother.' And from that moment miraculously his sufferings eased, because the gentleman realized that he was under his divine father's care. Swami says, 'Your own parents may love you with some selfish intent, but this divine Sai Mata and Pita showers compassion on you, only so that you may attain success in your efforts towards self-realization.' Om Shri Sathya Sai Arpanamastu. Om Shri Sai Satya Swarupaya Namaha. Salutation to Shri Sai, who is the embodiment of truth. The word Satya has 3 syllables. Sa, Sakshatkar, self-realization. Ta, Tapas, penance. Ya, Yama, control of the senses. The truth experienced through self-realization is Satya. About Satya Swarupa Bhagavan Baba says, 'This entire universe is a manifestation of truth. This world cannot exist without it. Each and everything has emerged out of Satyam. God created everything from truth. There is no space where it does not exist. Satya is the one and only sacred embodiment of the Atma. All prosperity, all pleasures emerge from truth. The Vedas, Upanishads, and all the sacred scriptures have also emerged out of it. Truth and God are inseparable. Truth is God. Upanishads also declare, Raso Vai Saha. God is sweetness. This denotes that God pervades everything in a subtle form. Like sugar in sugar cane and butter in milk, he is present everywhere. Although it may be difficult to directly get a vision of the Lord, his existence can be experienced in many ways. The sweetness of sugar, the sourness of a lemon, the bitter taste of neem, all these give an experience of the existence of divinity. The joy that we derive on seeing a mountain, a waterfall, or a forest is the revelation of God's existence. The bright sun and the stars, the planets revolving in their orbits, are all manifestations of the divine. A flame reveals the nature of fire. A drop of water reveals the river Ganges. In the same way, if one understands man's true nature, one will be able to realize God. Although constantly engaged in activity, man is unaware of his true nature. He identifies himself with the body, mind, and the senses. He forgets that his true nature, which is Sat or Atma Swarupa, transcends all these. There are two existing principles in man, Deha or Kshetra, body, and the indweller, Dehi or Kshetragnya, which is the self, one's true nature. There is a story about young Swami when he used to go with his devotees to the banks of the Chitravati river in the evenings. Once some of the devotees expressed their desire to know Swami's Sathya Swarup, true nature. At the time of sunset, while walking with the devotees, Swami suddenly disappeared. Everybody started searching for him, but to no avail. Suddenly they heard a clapping sound from a distance, from a hilltop. When everyone looked in the direction, they saw Swami standing on top of the hill. He asked everyone from there, "Do you want to see the sun?" "Yes," everybody replied in unison. "How will the sun reappear after sunset?" But lo and behold, they could see the Surya Narayana, sun, rising behind Sri Satyanarayana. Its brilliance was so intense, they all started sweating profusely due to the heat. They shouted, "Swami, it's too hot!" In an instant the heat started reducing. Then Swami asked, "Do you want to see the moon?" And the full moon started rising behind him. As the pleasant moonlight started to spread everywhere, the devotees feeling the cold started shivering. Some of them shouted, "Swami, it's too cold!" and the cold slowly subsided. Then Swami announced in his authoritative tone, "I will show you the third eye now, watch carefully." Even as everyone was wondering how the third eye will be, Swami could not be seen. Only his head was seen. It started growing in size to an extent that the entire sky was covered by his head. As everyone was watching this, an opening appeared in the center of his eyebrows. Fiery sparks and light started gushing out from it. The brilliance increased to a point when some devotees, unable to bear it, fell unconscious and children began to cry. Suddenly, all this phenomena disappeared, and everybody saw Swami standing amidst them. Smilingly looking towards them, he asked them all, "What happened? Are you all right?" Then he materialized Vibhuti and applied it on everyone's foreheads. One by one, all those who had fallen unconscious regained consciousness. But all of them felt the vertigo effect for another 2 days. While explaining this extraordinary darshan, Swami said, "Since you prayed to me to show you my real nature, I did all this. Because of your prayers of many past births, I have shown you the third eye. I did not show you even 1,000th part of my brilliance, but that too was difficult for you to withstand. May Swami bless us all with the capacity to understand his true nature, Satya Swarupa. We sincerely pray at his divine lotus feet to grant us the opportunity. Om Shri Sathya Sai Namastu. Om Shri Sai Satya Dharma Parayanaya Namaha. Salutation to Shri Sai, who solely adheres to truth and righteousness. Dharma is righteousness. Parayana is ultimate refuge. We bow down to Shri Sai, who is the ultimate refuge and can be attained through self-realization by adhering to truth and righteousness. Whenever God has incarnated on earth, he has given utmost importance to adherence to truth and righteousness. The Ramayana narrates the various duties of a father, mother, son, brother, wife, and king. Lord Ramachandra has set an ideal for us by explicitly following his duties as a son, husband, brother, and king. On many occasions during the Sri Krishna avatar, Bhagavan stressed on the importance of dharma, righteousness or duty. In the Bhagavad Gita, he has declared, Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha paradharmat swanushtitat swadharme nidhanam shreya paradharmo bhayavaha. Better one's own duty, though devoid of merit, than the duty of another well discharged. Better is death in one's own duty, the duty of another is fraught with fear and generates a positive danger. Here, Bhagavan relates to dharma as one's own duty or righteousness. Even while assuring the devotees of his divine protection, Sri Krishna has declared, Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam braja. Abandoning all dharmas of the body, mind, and intellect, surrender to me. Live my message is the inner significance of this declaration. There is one significant story from Sai's Shirdi incarnation. Sainath had one particular habit. At times, when he talked, he seemed to speak irrelevant things, apparently vague to a common listener, but relevant and meaningful to the one for whom it was intended. Once, when Sainath was sitting in Dwarka Mai and talking to his devotees, an unknown person arrived for his darshan. No sooner did he start stepping up onto the steps of Dwarka Mai, Baba thundered at the top of his voice, "Stop! Don't climb up!" Such an expression was quite alarming to all present, including the person concerned. Not bothering about Baba's warning, he continued climbing the steps of Dwarka Mai. Baba then flew into a rage. His face and eyes turning red with anger, he shouted, "Stop there! Don't you dare climb up! Haven't you sold your father?" Hearing this, the intruder felt ashamed. He hung his head and left. None were able to understand the significance of this statement. On inquiry, it was revealed that he had recently changed his religion. No one was aware of this. But can anything be hidden from the omniscient Sai? All religions teach the same principle of love, so why did he need to change his religion? He could have fulfilled his duties by remaining true to the religion of his birth. Sainath did not approve of this, and so showed his displeasure. In the present Sathya Sai avatar, Swami tells us, "My life is my message." At the age of 10, he told Ishwaramma, "I have been born to serve." His task of upliftment of humanity is ongoing. Swami says, "To follow religion is an eternal law. If one stops abiding by his religion, there will be chaos in the world." In the Gita, Sri Krishna has declared, "Ye tu dhammar mrutam idam yathoktam paryupasate shraddha dhana mat parama bhaktasta ativa me priyaha." They indeed who follow this immortal dharma, law of life, as described above, endowed with faith, regarding me as their supreme goal, such devotees are exceedingly dear to me. Today, those devotees who practice righteous conduct religiously are very dear to Sai Krishna. Om Shri Sai Sathya Sai Namastu. Om Shri Sai Varadaya Namaha. Salutation to Shri Sai, who is the giver of boons. In every incarnation of his, Bhagavan has been granting rewards to devotees who undertake arduous sadhana. God grants his blessings in many ways to those who love him. In his Shirdi Sai incarnation, he used to say, "In the beginning, I give all my devotees whatever they ask for. I grant them so much that ultimately they ask for what I wish to bestow on them." This is a unique incident which reveals Sri Sai's extraordinary ways of granting boons. A lot of devotees used to throng the Dwarka Mai for Sainath's darshan. In those days, persons like Mahalsapati, Madhavrao Deshpande alias Shama, and Tatya Koti Patil used to assemble around Sai. One day, one gentleman and his family came to Dwarka Mai for Sai's darshan. When this gentleman's son put his head on Sainath's feet, Sainath made him sit next to him very lovingly, and casting a loving glance towards the boy, he said, "Diya," meaning thereby given. The expression sounded strange to the boy's father and all present except Shama, who at once asked the boy to say "Leelah," meaning thereby "I accept." Immediately the boy said to Sainath, "Leelah." Sainath smiled happily. The next moment he took off his robe, kafni, and put it on that boy. At that time, this gesture of Baba's was beyond anybody's understanding. A few years passed by. Sainath took Samadhi on Dashara, Vijayadashami, 15th October 1918. The young boy grew up and studied to become a doctor. The Sai Sansthan was established at Shirdi. The same boy was appointed as the first president of Shirdi Sai Sansthan. His name was Dr. Gawankar, and Sainath had blessed him with the honorable robe long back. As Shirdi Sai's well-known words say, "Know that everyone will receive help here. Whatever anyone may ask, he will receive it." We all know that Sai's second incarnation is Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba in the form of Shiva Shakti. Shiva had once granted a boon to Maharshi Bharadwaj that he would take birth thrice in his lineage. Devi Satyabhama had given an indication to Sri Kondamaraju, Baba's grandfather, of the advent of Sri Krishna. Sri Venkavdhut, a yogi, had also given a hint to Kondamaraju about the birth of a divine being in their family quite early on. Swami's mother Ishwaramma saw a divine flash of light entering her womb before Swami's birth. All these were God's boons. Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba says, "When you come to me and see me for the first time, you may feel shy, but I know you since a very long time. So whatever you want to ask of me, ask without any reservations. Do you feel awkward when asking something from your father? Ask me in the same manner." Swami also says, "I am an invaluable diamond with many facets, so don't use me as a paperweight." The inner significance of this is, when I have come to give you the highest treasure, why ask for petty things? When Swami grants boons to his devotees and gives with his innumerable hands, how much can one receive with just two hands? Om Shri Sathya Sai Natharpanamastu. Om Shri Sai Satpurushaya Namaha. Salutations to Shri Sai, one who exists eternally. The absolute formless God, if he so desires, takes a form. We also recognize him as Satchitananda, truth, awareness, bliss, or Ekam Sat. Satchitananda dwells in subtle form in each and every animate or inanimate matter in this universe. Everything has two attributes, namely Nam, name, and Rupa, form. Satchitananda is associated with essence or spirit. The name and form which is subject to change is associated with nature, Prakriti. Name and form come into existence only because of Satchitananda. A human being, therefore, is a visible embodiment of Satchitananda. The name and form are constantly subject to change, but the eternal divine is unchanging. Bhagavan has said to Arjuna, "Arjuna, although I am birthless and changeless, although I am the Lord God of all living beings, I dwell in nature and am born from age to age out of my love. You and I have passed through numerous births. I possess awareness of all those births, but you don't." This happened many years ago. Once Swami was traveling to Madras, now Chennai, to visit his devotees there. A few devotees accompanied him. They were traveling in 7 cars. Swami's car was being driven by a devotee named Krishna. This Krishna was a young man, but of a thin frame. Suddenly it started raining very heavily. Nothing could be seen through the windscreen. This resulted in a slow speed of travel. Swami held his own hand behind Krishna's neck to cushion it like a pillow, lest his neck should hurt from the continuous driving. When Krishna said, "I feel like eating something sweet," Swami materialized hot jalebis for him and all the other occupants in the car. When the downpour became very heavy, Swami himself started wiping the moisture on the windscreen. Everybody was amazed to see Swami's concern for Krishna. Finally they reached Madras. Whenever this Krishna was in Puttaparthi, Swami himself would look after all his needs. He would feed him from his own plate. Unable to understand this extreme care, someone asked Swami why he loved Krishna so much. Swami's answer was clear and straight. He said, "During my previous Shirdi incarnations, when everybody used to laugh at me and throw stones at me, one small boy would come running and cling to me, saying, 'He is not a madman, but a Mahatma.' This same boy is now born as Krishna and is very dear to me. Swami knows all our past births. He blesses us and rewards us according to our past karmas, because he is the eternal consciousness." Om Shri Sathya Sai Natharpanamastu. Om Shri Sai Satya Gunatmane Namaha. Salutations to Sri Sai, who transcends all the three gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas. Amongst Satya, Dharma, Shanti and Prema, Swami has given priority to Satya. This is because Satya is the form of the Lord who transcends all the three gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas. He also transcends time and is eternal. Swami says, the Atma dwells as the three gunas in the human body, which is made up of 5 elements. The triple incarnation of Brahma, Vishnu and Mahesh reside in our body as the three gunas. These 3 are a form of divinity. Brahma or Sattva is the creative principle. Vishnu or Rajas is the sustaining principle, and Mahesh or Tamas is the dissolution principle, which destroys all the negative tendencies. Though every human being is a repository of all the 3 gunas, the Sattva or the creative principle is predominant in female or the mothers, and the Rajas or sustaining principle is predominant in male or fathers. Thus it is as the Upanishads declare, Matra Devo Bhava. Mother should be worshipped as Brahma the creator. Devotion and service to mother symbolizes worship to God. After mother it is the father. He protects his children, fosters them, and directs them towards the path of God realization. So father should be worshipped as Vishnu the sustainer. Therefore, in a way, mother and father are representatives of Brahma and Vishnu. Tamoguna is ordinarily associated with lethargy or dullness, but this is not an accurate interpretation. In this context, tamas is associated with the auspiciousness of Shiva, Mahesh, who stands for the destruction of all evil tendencies in man, to help him experience his own divine nature. This triple incarnation of the 3 gunas exists in every individual. The Shrutis declare, Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam. God exists in all beings. Isha Vasyam Idam Jagat. God pervades this entire universe. Sri Sathya Sai Baba not only transcends these 3 gunas, but as Satya Swarupa, his form symbolizes the ultimate truth. We are all aware of the Lingodbhava that Swami performs during Mahashivaratri every year. He then gives the manifested Atma Lingam to some chosen devotee for daily worship. Once it so happened that he gave the Atma Lingam to a lady devotee and also explained to her about the mode of worship. The lady was overjoyed and she installed it in the shrine in her house and started regular worship. After a while she had to travel on work, both in India and abroad. She would carry the lingam with her and perform worship wherever she went. But in doing so, she had doubts and was worried about maintaining its sanctity and felt burdened. She was also unsure whether she would be able to worship the lingam in future, so she thought of returning it to Swami. On her next visit during darshan, Swami called her for an interview. However, she failed to express her doubts about the Atma Linga. The lingam was wrapped in a silk cloth and was with her. The interview got over. Swami started going up the staircase. His upward walk was strangely followed by a tuk-tuk sound. When she looked in the direction of the sound, she was stunned to see the Atma Lingam following Swami on the steps, resulting in that sound. She immediately checked her silk cloth, in which she had carried the Atma Lingam, and was shocked to find it missing. Unknowingly she exclaimed, Swami, my Atma Lingam! Swami stopped for a moment, looked at her and said, Your Atma Lingam? She realized her mistake, but it was too late. By that time, the Atma Lingam and Swami were already gone. Om Shri Sathya Sai Natharpanamastu. Om Shri Sai Sadhu Vardhanaya Namaha. Salutations to Shri Sai, who increases the goodness of the people in the world. In the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan Shri Krishna tells Arjuna, Sadbhave sadhubhave cha sadityeta prayujyate prashaste karmani tatha satchabdah partha yujyate. The word Sat is used in the sense of reality and of goodness, and also, O Partha, the word Sat is used in the sense of an auspicious act. The word Sat denotes Sadbhava, and Sadhubhava means goodness. In the same way, Sat also denotes good work. Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba enhances virtue and goodness in all people. He inspires individuals to become better human beings. Swami constantly showers his grace on his students and helps them to transform themselves. He has established educational institutions to fulfill this purpose. These institutes impart quality education, which is based on human values, whereby a lot of importance is given to morality and pure character. Here are two incidents which reveal how children who have gone astray should be reformed, and how goodness should be nurtured in good-natured children. The first one is from the Summer Showers course held in Brindavan in 1973. Around 800 students from all over the country had gathered to participate in the summer course. Many of them, however, were not inclined to the strict discipline of Brindavan. Two of them probably found it torturous. So one evening they went out of the ashram, had non-vegetarian food, and smoked cigarettes. They also went for a movie and came back stealthily at night. They thought nobody would know about their escapade, but what can remain hidden from the omniscient Swami? Next morning he called them and asked about the previous evening. At first they denied everything, but when Swami materialized a photo in which they were seen smoking, they were speechless and started weeping in repentance. The ever affectionate Swami forgave them, so that they could be encouraged now to cultivate good qualities. The second incident is from the boys' hostel. One night Swami visited the hostel. Suddenly the electricity went off, and a student heard Swami's voice telling him, "Put your hands behind." As he did that, Swami placed a laddu in his hands. Within minutes the power supply was resumed, and all the students realized that each one of them had a laddu in his hand. Whatever was experienced by one had been experienced by all. So each one had heard Swami's voice, and each one had a laddu in his hand. Everyone was ecstatic. Why did Swami perform this Leelah? No doubt he wanted to make the students happy. But beyond that, the prime motivation was to enhance devotion, good qualities and values in each of them. Om Shri Sathya Sai Kalpadruma. Om Shri Sai Sadhujana Poshanaya Namaha. Salutations to Shri Sai, who looks after and sustains good people. God incarnates in order to increase and sustain virtue and righteousness in people. Whenever the life of a virtuous person is beset with difficulties, Swami provides the strength to cope with these difficulties, and removes the obstacles that hamper one's progress. Once, the daughter of Sri Radha Krishna Chetty, an old-time devotee of Swami, Srimati Vijaya Kumari, along with her husband Sri Hemchand, had gone for Swami's darshan. Swami came up to them and said, "Kumaramma, you have been promoted." When she replied in the affirmative, saying, "Oh, yes," Swami further said, "You did not ask in which area of life you are promoted. Shani Deva has entered your birth chart." Unperturbed, Smriti Vijaya Kumari replied, "Oh, that is very good, Swami. Why be afraid when we have God standing behind us like a mighty mountain?" Thereafter, the couple had to pass through a very difficult phase. They suffered a financial crisis. Although they had means of livelihood, no income was available. They were both under tremendous psychological stress, but their faith in Saishwar was unchanged. It grew deeper and stronger. Once Swami asked her, "You need some money, isn't it? Shall I give you some?" At this, Vijaya Kumari replied, "Swami, you alone are feeding us. Do not give us money, but indirectly please help us to earn it." This earnest plea with total surrender reached Bhagavan. Swami penned them a letter. In it, Swami wrote, "Your prayer from the sorrowful heart has reached me. It has won my heart. Now I am bound to you. Don't be sad. In the near future you will be happy. Very soon you will sing and dance on the waves of Ananda." With Swami's blessings, their sufferings and misfortune finally came to an end. They recovered financially, and happiness dawned on them. The family was able to overcome this difficult period only due to Swami's support, and now are spending their old age happily contemplating on Swami. This is how Swami always stands by those who are good and saintly. Om Shri Sathya Sai Kalpadruma. Om Shri Sai Sarvajnaya Namaha. Salutations to Sri Sai, who is omniscient. Sai, the indweller in every heart, is aware of everything, not only in every individual mind, but also of all the external happenings in the world. In chapter 7, Shloka 26 of the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord declares, Vedaham samatitani vartamanani charjuna bhavishyani cha bhutani mam tu veda na kaschana. I know, O Arjuna, the beings of the past and present and the future, but no one knows me. On many occasions, devotees have experienced how Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba is aware of each detail in every individual's life. Here are two incidents describing this. In 1976, the well-known Sarod player Ustad Amjad Ali Khan was visiting Bangalore for a performance. After the program, he called on his friend Shri Rahim Nijamuddin, who was Commissioner of Police. Shri Rahim was planning a trip to Puttaparthi. Amjad Ali Khan decided to accompany him. They were fortunate to be selected for an interview. As they sat with others in the interview room, Swami materialized a hot laddu dripping with ghee, and turning to Amjad Ali, said, "It is made in pure ghee." Amjad Ali was astonished. He marveled as to how Swami knew that he liked sweets prepared in pure ghee. But there was more to follow. Swami called him in the inner room. At the time, Amjad Ali was under a lot of mental stress. In the inner room, Swami told him, "Don't worry, marry the same Assamese girl you have chosen. She is suited to you." Amjad Ali was amazed, and was grateful to Swami for removing the confusion in his mind. He thought this fact was known to him alone, but Swami knows everything. He was grateful because this command cum blessing from Swami cleared all his doubts about marrying that girl. There is another story about Sri Madhav Rao Dikshit. In 1962, he was staying in Mangalore. He is the same Madhav who was fortunate to be blessed by Sri Shirdi Sainath. He, along with his uncle Sri Hari Sitaram Dikshit, was in Shirdi from 1910 to 1918. He would call his uncle Kaka, so all others, including Shirdi Sai Baba, started referring to Sri Haribhau Dikshit as Kaka. Sainath was very fond of the child Madhav. One day while he was playing, Sainath called him. He took out Udi with his right hand from the dhuni, and with a handful of Udi slapped hard on Madhav's forehead. He hit so hard that Madhav started crying and ran to his uncle saying, "I will never come to Baba." Kaka had seen it all, and he said smilingly, "Do you know how fortunate you are? We are all yearning to receive such a slap from him." Why did Sai Baba do this? Madhav used to suffer from severe headaches. When Sainath slapped him, the headaches vanished forever. In 1962, Sri Madhavrao Dikshit heard that Sai has been reborn as Sri Sathya Sai and is residing at Puttaparthi. But Madhav Dikshit was not ready to accept him as Sai Baba, so he decided to find out for himself and traveled to Puttaparthi. Swami called him for an interview. As soon as he entered, Swami said, "Take out my Kaka's photo. You have it in your pocket, isn't it?" Swami also said, "After I slapped your forehead with Udi, your headache hasn't recurred, isn't it?" All of Madhav Dikshit's doubts about Swami were cleared. He was convinced of Swami's omniscience. Om Shri Sathya Sai Arpanamastu. Om Shri Sai Sarvajana Priyaya Namaha. Salutations to Shri Sai, who is dear to all. Sarva covers all living beings, not humans alone, even animals. Lord Sai is dear to all the living creatures. The love of Sai Gita, the female elephant for Swami, exemplifies this. In darshan, thousands of devotees sit patiently and yearn for getting a glimpse of Swami. When the Veda chanting heralding his arrival starts, a wave of emotion runs through the crowd, and the feeling reaches its peak when Swami gives darshan. This is because the simple act of darshan fills the hearts of all with Swami's divine love. On Gokulashtami, devotees gather in Prashanti Nilayam to celebrate Lord Krishna's birthday. In the earlier days, on this occasion, even the cattle and other animals were brought for Swami's darshan. Sai Gita, the beloved elephant pet of Swami, was beautifully adorned and brought to the mandir for darshan. The expression of love in the eyes of all these animals towards Swami, and Swami's love for them, was very evident. Here is a touching story about how even animals have love and devotion for Swami. Long ago, Swami kept some dogs as pets. Their names were amusing, Jack and Jill. One of them, a Pomeranian, especially loved Swami. Once, when wandering in the village of Puttaparthi, this dog met with an accident, and a car ran over him. In that wounded condition, he dragged himself to Prashanti Nilayam, threw himself at Swami's lotus feet, and then breathed his last. A few years ago, there were some deer in the Brindavan ashram. Swami used to feed them apples and tend them lovingly. Once, when Swami came out for darshan, he saw some students running towards him, and from the other side, the deer too, scampering to him. He said, "These are four-legged deers, and those are two-legged deers. Both are dear to me." Swami's students love him so intensely that whenever Swami travels from Prashanti Nilayam to Brindavan or vice versa, they are unable to hold back their tears. No wonder Swami says, "My real wealth is my students." Om Shri Sathya Sai Arpanamastu. Om Shri Sai Sarvashakti Murtaye Namaha. Salutations to Shri Sai, who is the embodiment of all divine powers. Bhagavan Shri Sathya Sai Baba embodies all the gods and goddesses. All powers are contained in him. Akashat patitam toyam yatha gacchati sagaram sarvadeva namaskara keshavam prati gacchati. As the water from the skies reaches the ocean, salutations to all gods reach Keshava. Millions of people from all over the world offer prayers to their own form of God, and these prayers reach Swami, who is the Omnipotent One. Swami says, "When you come to me, there is no need for you to change the worship of the name and the form you are accustomed to, because all names and forms are mine. Your devotion reaches me." There is an ashram and samadhi of Nithyananda Swami near Mumbai at Ganeshpuri, Vajreshwari. He had a disciple named Swami Shraddhananda. Once, while in Mangalore, he attended a Sai bhajan in a devotee's house. The bhajans ended with the arti, and Swami Shraddhananda went into deep samadhi. On returning back to his normal state, he said, "My Guru Swami Nithyananda is asking me to go with Dr. Gadhiya for Sri Sathya Sai Baba's darshan." Next day, Dr. Gadhiya and Swami Shraddhananda left for Puttaparthi. Bhagavan Baba called them for an interview. As they were waiting with others in the room, something unexpected happened. When Baba, in his usual manner, started rotating his hand to materialize Vibhuti, Swami Shraddhananda suddenly tried to stop him by holding his wrist. All those who were present in the room were stunned. Dr. Gadhiya felt awkward, since he had brought Shraddhananda ji for Baba's darshan. But Shanti Swarupa Bhagavan was unmoved. Smiling lovingly, he asked Shraddhananda, "Why did you hold my hand?" Shraddhananda ji replied, "I have not come here to get chocolates or peppermints. I expect something much higher." Baba asked, "Do you mind if I give chocolates and peppermints to others?" Bhagavan then materialized Vibhuti and gave it to all others except Swami Shraddhananda. Baba then called each one into the inner room to give them personal guidance. The last one to be called was Swami Shraddhananda. Bhagavan Baba opened the top two buttons of his robe and asked Shraddhananda to look at his chest. As he did so, he became ecstatic, and with tears rolling down his cheeks exclaimed, "O Gurudeva, you are here in the form of Sri Sathya Sai." As he looked at Bhagavan Baba's chest, he was blessed with a vision of his Guru, Swami Nithyananda. Many from all over the world have had similar experiences, where they have been blessed with the darshan of their Ishtadaivat in Bhagavan Baba. Om Shri Sathya Sai Arpanamastu. Om Shri Sai Sarveshaya Namaha. Salutations to Shri Sai, who is the Lord of all. Whoever calls out to Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba sincerely from his heart, the omnipresent Swami responds to his call and showers his blessings. Whichever form of God one may call out to, Swami showers his grace on those devotees, for he is the nourisher of the entire universe and the supreme essence of all. Swami's devotees from all over the world have been blessed with his darshan in the form of their Ishtadevat, desired deity. Many of his European devotees have seen him as Lord Jesus. Some of his old devotees have had his darshan in the form of Shirdi Sai. There are some fortunate ones who have been blessed with the darshan of Sri Shiva Sai at the Virupaksha temple. A small story about Swami as the embodiment of all deities. There was a lady who was an ardent devotee of Swami. She would sometimes go for Swami's darshan after discharging the family responsibilities. Many a time she felt that her son too should accompany her, but her son had contrary feelings. Once, somehow she convinced him to accompany her. On the way he suddenly said to her, "I will not come to Puttaparthi. Instead I will go to Tirupati." And he left for Tirupati. His mother went all by herself for Swami's darshan. In darshan, Swami came straight to her and gave her Pad Namaskar. But she looked sad. On seeing this, Swami asked her, "Amma, why are you unhappy?" Choked with emotion, she was unable to speak. Swami said, "Amma, just as I am here in Puttaparthi, I am in Tirupati as well, so don't be sad. Your son is visiting Tirupati, isn't it? It means he has come to me." Om Shri Sathya Sai Kalpadruma. Om Shri Sai Sarva Sangha Parityagine Namaha. Salutations to Shri Sai, who has given up all attachments. Bhagavan Shri Sathya Sai Baba has no attachments, yet he is equally attached to all. He is mother, father, brother, and friend to all. At the age of 14 itself, Satyanarayana Raju left his home and declared that he was Sai Baba. At the time, he referred to his worldly mother as Maya and renounced all worldly ties, Sarva Sangha Parityaga. One can use the word detached for sadhus and sannyasis, but not for Swami, as he is God and transcends the gunas. The relationships of mother, father, brother, sister, friends are part and parcel of human birth. To snap these worldly ties, he ate 3 morsels of food from his mother Ishwaramma's hands, just to please and appease her, and said, "Now Maya, illusion, has left me." Swami respectfully addressed his worldly father as Griham Abbai and mother as Griham Ammai. He also gave the respect due to all the elders in the family, but ultimately the essential relationship between them was one of God and devotee. From childhood itself, little Satya was never attracted to worldly things. The other children in the home were drawn towards food, colorful clothes, and entertainment, but young Satya was never inclined towards those things. Swami, who transcends gunas, has no worldly attachments. Yet, like all incarnations of God, he is bound to his devotees. He is ever engaged in the spiritual upliftment of his devotees towards the supreme goal. He declared in childhood, "I was born to serve," and has been serving mankind ever since. He showers love on all, but takes particular care of his students' holistic progress. The unconditional love that is showered by Sai Mata on these students is several times more than the love they receive from their own parents. Om Shri Sathya Sai Kalpadruma. Om Shri Sai Sarvantaryamine Namaha. Salutations to Shri Sai, who is the inner conscience of all. Bhagavan Shri Sathya Sai Baba as God incarnate is omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. This power is present only in avatars. He who resides in the heart, being omniscient, can easily read the mind and heart of all his devotees. He hears all sincere prayers and responds to them accordingly. He guides us, protects us, and even rebukes us, if required, for our evil thoughts. He picks up even the subtlest thought in the mind of his devotees. Here is a small story to illustrate this. Once, Diana Baskin from USA, along with her husband Joel and little daughter, set out for Puttaparthi. She was extremely tense till they boarded the flight because of the uncertainty in her husband's mind regarding coming to Puttaparthi for Swami's darshan. He was reluctant to come to Swami. Finally, he boarded the flight and she felt relieved. At Prashanti Nilayam, they were well accommodated, since Diana's mother had already arrived 1 month earlier. But Joel had one problem about his smoking. No such vices are allowed in the ashram. So next day he went out of the ashram along with his wife to the hilltop for a smoke. Sitting there and enjoying the scenic beauty from the hilltop, Joel suddenly shouted, "Look! Look at that beautiful rainbow!" Diana turned her gaze towards the wondrous sight in the sky. The rainbow was a vertical one, and extremely unusual. It vanished after some time. Joel, very excited by now, said to his wife, "Do you remember? It was only last week I had expressed a desire that Sai Baba should materialize for me a rainbow." And Joel was under the impression that this desire was known only to himself, Diana, and his friends in Los Angeles. But how can the omniscient Sai not know about this? When both of them returned to the ashram, to their utter surprise, Sri Kasturi welcomed them, saying, "Swami has called you both for an interview tomorrow morning." Next morning they arrived in the interview room. As Swami came down the steps, he laughed aloud, saying, "So, how did you like my rainbow?" and patted Joel lovingly on his back. Joel was speechless. Tears started rolling down his cheeks. Diana too had tears in her eyes. Back home, when Diana pleaded with Joel to come along for Swami's darshan, he had put a condition, that he would seek Swami's darshan only if Swami would show him a rainbow. Swami, the indweller in every heart, knowingly fulfilled his condition. Swami took his seat, and everyone sat around him. Joel sat right next to Swami. When Swami inquired after her daughter's health, Diana told him that the child was suffering from a cold and a stomachache. Swami rolled up his sleeve, and with a circular motion of his hand, materialized a fresh fig and gave it to her. After the interview, Joel searched the entire market for a fig. He got the standard answer: "This is not the season for figs, and you will not get them anywhere in southern India right now." What could be the reason for Swami materializing a fig for the child? Just moments before he did so, Joel had a thought in his mind: can Swami materialize a fruit instead of the usual vibhuti? And the very next moment the omniscient Swami materialized a fresh fig, which was not available anywhere at the time. Om Shri Sathya Sai Kalpadruma. Om Shri Sai Mahimatmane Namaha. Salutations to Shri Sai, who is a great and glorious soul. Bhagavan Baba's glory has spread all over the world, and millions of people come to Prashanti Nilayam to seek his darshan. Some of them are spiritual aspirants, and some come for material gains. Here is an incident that took place in 1970. On hearing Bhagavan Baba's glory, Sri 108 Swami Virajanandaji Maharaj, who is now over 100 years old, arrived in Prashanti Nilayam from Kashi. He was accompanied by 15 to 20 of his disciples. After having stayed in the ashram for about 20 days, he formed an opinion about Baba thus: Sri Sathya Sai Baba is the god of foreigners and rich devotees. He is not an embodiment of love, because if he were, he would treat everyone equally. What could be the reason for such an opinion? In those 20 days of his stay, Bhagavan Baba had ignored him completely, and so Swami Virajanandaji decided to leave Prashanti Nilayam and travelled back to Dharmavaram. That night, they decided to camp at Dharmavaram. He was resting in a room, and his disciples were in the next one. After a while, someone knocked at the door, saying, "May I come in, please?" The person allowed to enter made a humble request, saying, "Swamiji, Bhagavan Baba has sent me here to take you to Puttaparthi." Virajanand ji lost his temper and said, "I will not come. He is a god of the rich. He is not an embodiment of love as he claims to be." The person insisted, "I have got a car, and I will not move out of here unless you come with me." Finally, Virajanand ji had no option, and he left with the messenger. The moment they reached Prashanti Nilayam, Bhagavan called him to the first floor. Virajanand ji was about to pass a scornful remark, but Baba stopped him and said, "Let us first have our meal. Then you can ask me whatever you wish to ask." After the meal, Bhagavan Baba showed Swami Virajanand ji his right palm. On seeing that palm, Virajananda broke into a sweat. He was all confused. What did he see in that palm? He saw all his disciples and his ashram in Kashi in that palm. He could simultaneously hear Bhagavan's words, "Love, love, love." What is love? Do you think you can attain self-realization by abandoning your family and collecting thousands of followers? In fact, you are far from it. This is moha, infatuation. Only devotion and love takes you closer to God. Desires and worldly fame cannot take you close to God. On hearing Bhagawan's words, Swami Virajanandji realized his mistake. He held on to Bhagawan Baba's feet and sought his permission to leave. Baba said, "Wait a moment." Virajananda sat down. For a moment he felt sleepy. When he opened his eyes, he realized that he was back in his room at Dharmavaram. He could not fathom how he reached there in a moment. He meditated on the divine lotus feet of Bhagawan Baba and realized that it was all nothing but Bhagawan's Leelah. Om Shri Sathya Sai Natharpanamastu.